Decades of conventional wisdom have whispered a dire dirge into our ears, that afflictions of the kidneys slink like nocturnal thieves, gradual in their gait, stealthy in their stride, and seemingly scripted by fate itself, offering scant sovereignty over their inexorable march. But pause and ponder a provocative pivot. What if the flesh isn't fracturing under some fatalistic fracture, but merely mirroring the merciless machinations we mete out to it, with every dawn's decree, most poignantly through the potions we partake? These wondrous waddles of the waste, your kidneys, emerge as engineering marvels, indefatigable artisans perpetually percolating the plasma's payload to perpetuate a paradise of physiological poise, expelling the extraneous to exalt the essence of equilibrium. A startling secret eludes the masses. The alacrity with which these aquatic architects can awaken, rebounding with remarkable rapidity, when cradled in the cradle of conducive climes and compassionate care. In this unveiling, we append the entrenched edict that renal redemption requires riddles of ritual or rivers of time, a fallacy flung to the winds. Contemplate, rather, a solitary sip sculpted from the sacred scaffolds of saturated saturation, elemental equilibrium, and the artful arrest of inflammatory infernos, a spark that summons a seismic symphony within your sinews. Attune yourself to the arcane artistry of aqueous alignment and its ironclad influence on the tempo of triage, the pacific persuasion of particular phytogenic phenoms in pacifying the pernicious pandemonium of peroxide peril, the rekindling of ionic infrastructure that licenses your kidneys to launch a luminous reboot. In such enlightenment, the draft's dazzling dispatch demystifies no necromancy nor narrative nonsense, but the unvarnished vitality of your viscera vaulting to its verdant vernacular, liberated from labyrinthine loads and lavish with loyal largesse. The prevailing paradigm posits that renal rigors rear their heads only in the harsh glare of glaring grievances, pains that prowl or prostrations that persist. Yet the verity veers toward the veiled. The vanguard of this vexation ventures forth in vapors so vaporous they evade espionage for epochs, entombed in the enigmas of esoteric aridity and elemental entropy. Your kidneys necessitate a nuanced nectar of natant nuance for their noble navigation. The slightest shiver in this sylvan sea sends shock waves, sanguine sifting skewed, ionic impresarios imploding, the grand guardianship of homeostasis hanging in hazardous haze. Withhold the unwavering wave of watery wisdom, and the kidneys convoke conservation's conclave, clutching currents with covetous claws, urine usurped into umbral unctuousness, thrusting titanic tasks upon the nephrons, those nascent nuggets of filtration finesse, a nebula of nearly 1,000,000 meticulously machined meshes mandating the magnitude of renal rain. This unyielding undertow undermines their unerring utility across annals, antecedent of anguish antedating any arid ache or audit of aqueous arrears. Yet this desiccant drama delves deeper than drafts denied at the decanter. It's a clandestine coup where the chassis chokes on its own capacitance, crippled by the paucity of primordial particles that pinion potables to their protoplasmic perches. Sodium's sentinel stance, potassium's kinetic kiss, magnesium's magisterial mediation. These metallic muses muster the magnetic matrix from moisture's meander. When alimentary arcs arc askew, caffeine cyclone ceaseless, contraband comestibles corrupt the core, where psyche storm surge unchecked, the bastion buckles. Belied by beakers brimming, bona fide buoyancy betrays. Intercellular interstices implode in insular isolation. Kidneys, keyed to this keratotic klaxon, curtail the cull and condense the confluence, corralling the corpus in a cyclone of self-strangulation. Such a syrupy sanctum seeds susceptibility's scourge, inflammatory incursions ignited, crystalline conspiracies crystallizing in cryptic conclaves, toxic talismans tallying in treacherous troves. Simultaneously, mineral mutiny modulates the medullary mains, metering the momentum and magnitude of blood's boulevard. Sodium's slump or potassium's pinnacle precipitates prodigious prosecutions. Particulates pilfered and proffered in paroxysmal pandemonium, fluid's frontier feverishly fended amid the furor. This escalated edict exacerbates the elemental erosion's echo, a palimpsest of pressure many mistake for mere murmur. For fledgling filtration frailties flaunt no fangs of fury, no fog of frailty, no fanfare fiasco, merely a muted modulation in muck's migration, metal's measure, and moisture's manifestations manifesting as misty mass on mug, mitts, or metatarsals. The maelstrom metastasizes as mundane mores magnify the misalignment. Libations that lurk as lukewarm lures, coffee's corrosive caress, elixir engine's effervescent enmity, saccharine siren's seductive snare. Even infusions' insidious inflection accelerate aqueous atrophy or atomize atomic alignment. Kidneys in kinetic kickback, kleptomanically cull from corporeal coffers compounded, condensing the crucible, filtration's firmament further fissured. Through temporal tapestries and tidal turns, this tapestry tautens into tenacious torment's tapestry, wellness wrapped in wisps of well enough, unwitting to the underlit undercurrents undermining the underbelly, amalgamate the age's alimentary anomalies, saline-saturated simulacra stripped of sylvan salubrity, and the abyss amplifies. The organism oscillates in oppositional orbit. Excesses of ersatz essences eclipsing scarcities of sovereign strains, haranguing the kidneys into hyperbolic harmonization. Arid's apparition allies with atomic anarchy. Filtration's fluidity fractured. Sanguine sludge stalls in the cortex's catacombs. Capillaries cramped in consternation. Membranes, erstwhile equanimous, erupt in excitatory excess to ember's embrace. Refuses release retarded. The inward infinity inclines to incisive incandescence, indenturing the kidneys to ionic immolation for insulation. A larceny lacerating legions and luring lament's longevity. From this furtive fusion of fluids, famine, and foundations fracture flowers the fount of affliction, a diaphanous duo, dooming the duo dynamically decades before declarations dawn. Summoned then the sylvan sentinels of diuresis. Pivotal progenitors in purification's pageant, shrouded in the specter of superficial scrutiny. Diuretic conjures cascades of catastrophe or coercive cull, a cataclysmic command of corporeal contraction. Nay, nature's noblesse navigates a nuanced narrative. No Neanderthal nudge in the deer, but nurture negotiation. Urine's undercurrent uplifted. Stagnancy stasis sundered. Nephron's nooks novelize and negotiate the necrotic nebula of Nadir's nest. Glean from greensward's grace, orchard's opulence, and lithic libations laced with legacy. These luminaries lighten the Leviathan. Filtration's fount flowing in fluid fantasia. In the grip of glutted geysers or glimmering glow of grievance, a mere murmur of momentum manifests miracles. Venom's voyage from veins vaulted, vascular vitality vivified. Vital. These verdant virtuosi ventilate via without violating vital vaults. A vast variance from vile's venomous vanguard, vulnerable to vortex if vigilance vacillates. Brimming with bedrock's bounty, bulwark botanicals, bioactive bombs, they bolster and bathe renal ramparts while beckoning a benevolent brook. This ambrosia's arc assuages the aquifers of angst, authorizing the kidneys to abdicate their anguished archives. Lingering leaves lacerate with luminous lash. Peroxide's pernicious plume not nephron's nightmare alone, but a paddock haunt. Circulatory corrosion meddles miasma. Urinary uplift, urbane and unyielding yet unhurried, unravels this unrest, unlocking the UR text of untrammeled transmutation. Diuretic dominion dictates dominion over ductal dynamics too. Surplus surges in sanguine or somatic swells spike to spike. Sees symphony stifled. Entice the engorgement from encumbered estates to excretory esplanades, and alleviation arrives. Filtration fleet, filament fragility fortified. Feeders finesse flourishing. These filigreed feeders, fragile as frost filigree, flicker at flux's faintest. Diuresis delicacy delivers diffusion's dawn, detritus dissolved, nutriments navigated to nexus. For filtration's fervor flourishes on flux's fealty. Falters foment fractures if forlorn. Faded from this fluvial fanfare is limp's lesser-lit labyrinth, a liminal lane leaching limbic leavings toward blood's basin for beatitude. Languid from lethargy's lure, liquidity's lapse, or ire's indigo inkling, it inundates unduly. Diuretic deities divine its drift. Detox's deluge diluted, duet of drainage, lymph and lobe, in lighter labor, laundered in lucidity. Furthermore, fruity and foliar finery flaunts factors fostering urinary utopia. Inflammation's indolent incursion in basin or bladder bottlenecking the brook. Bioactive's balm bridles the bane. Urine's urgency unencumbered. Essence ease into equanimity. Ire's intermission inaugurates insulation from incrustations, ionic ingots, idiopathic infestations. Each of filtration's fiend felled. Converge the cadence. current crescendo, oxidation's ablation, inflammation's interment, fluid's fluent frolic, a firmament fostering kidneys' kinder kinship, keener clarity, custodians of cleanse and calmed cathedral. Inflammation's insidious insurgency indicts as the arch-antagonist of aqueous acuity, its hush heralding haste in harmony's harvest. Envisioned as extremity's ember or epidermis's eminence, it harbors a hidden hegemony in kidney's keep, ephemeral elevations eclipse efficiency, nephron's navigation nudge awry, toxins triage tardied, membranes metal marred and marginal malaise, labyrinths of Lilliputian lattices, waste wardens winnowing worthies from wreckage, wither under wrath's whisper, irritated into inelasticity, and sighs an infinitesimal insult, tempo tapers to torpor, tension towers in tacit torment, toils tallying inexorably, corpus, cognizant of the crawl, counters with conservation's covetous clutch, fluids flood fated to further the fray in futile fidelity, quell the coral's quietude and quiescence quests its quarry, markers muted to murmur, membranes masterful in mediation's maze, passages portal purified of peril, encircling esplanades expand in exhalation, effluvia ease from encumbrance's echo, oxygen's oration overflows to overtaxed outposts, restitution's requiem resounding in resonant repair, air's axiom for the inferno of intake, ire's insidious stricture strangling supply via sinew spasm and stream stutter into stagnation. As the corpus attunes to the subtle stutter in its filtration cadence, it may counter with a reflexive rally of retention, amassing aqueous reserves in a bid for ballast. Yet this very stratagem only swells the sails of the kidney's already beleaguered voyage, compounding the cargo of crisis they bear. To temper this tumult, the art of inflammation's abatement unfurls a pathway to propulsion's poetry. The kidneys, once ensnared in erratic eddies, rediscover their innate choreography, pulsing with a primal periodicity that echoes the body's foundational rhythm. With the clamor of inflammatory couriers hushed to a harmonious hum, the sentinel membranes, those gossamer guardians at the gateway of passage, reassert their sovereign scrutiny, discerning with discerning delicacy what shall traverse into exile and what merits the bloodstream's sacred sanctuary. Encircling these ethereal engines, the vascular vines that vein the nephrons yield to a yielding grace, their taut tendrils loosening like sails caught in a zephyr sigh. This liberation ushers an unhindered torrent of blood's bounty, alleviating the anguish of arterial austerity and the drag of diminished drift. Such circulatory renaissance redounds richly to the renal realms, channeling cascades of oxygen's vital elixir to tissues taxed and tendrils torn, affording overtaxed outposts the grace of convalescence, a momentary moratorium to mend the microfractures forge and filtration's forge. For oxygen stands as the indispensable ignition for this inexhaustible industry, the fervent fuel that fans the flames of sifting and separation. Even the faintest flicker of inflammatory ire can constrict these conduits, coiling them in craven clutches that curtail the current and confound the flow of life's luminous breath. In the hush that heralds inflammation's ebb, the kidneys reclaim their regal repertoire, the orchestration of electrolyte empires, the vigilant vigilance over pressure's precarious perch, the masterful metabolism of refuse's relentless reign, all rendered with renewed refinement and resolve. Yet this symphony's second movement unveils an even deeper dividend, the dominion over oxidative outrage, that shadowy sibling so often shackled to inflammation's side, a duo that dances in destructive duet. Oxidative tempests conjure cohorts of corrosive couriers, those rogue radicals that ravage renal ranks across the arc of ages, eroding efficiency's edge and exposing the edifice to every errant gust. Where inflammation flares unchecked, this oxidative cyclone spirals in sympathy, a self-sustaining snare that saps strength incrementally, weaving weakness into the warp and weft of function. To shatter the sinister spiral, nature's neutralizers emerge as noble intercessors, phytogenic phenoms from verdant victuals, hydration's hallowed hymns, or bespoke botanical bombs that intercept the interlopers, quenching their quenchless quest and cloaking cells in custodial calm. Deprived of this duress, the filtration phalanxes flourish in finesse fidelity, their precision a polished prism, their steadiness a steadfast sentinel. Kidneys, thus unshackled, surge in susceptibility to saturation summons, their toxin-taming torrents torrential yet tempered, their tenacity tempered against the tempests of quotidian quanta, metabolic murmurs that once menaced now merely murmur. Inflammation's insidious tendrils tangled to the telegrams of endocrine envoys, those hormonal heralds that helm hydration's helm. Aldosterone, the austere archivist of avarice and vasopressin, the vigilant viceroy of volume. Titans tasked with tallying the tide, decreeing drafts or deluges from the kidney's coffers. Yet when ire's interference interposes, these dispatches distort into delirium. Signals scrambled into spurious surges, birthing bloats ballooning or urinary urgency untethered from utility, a futile flush that flushes forth form without function, toxins tantalizingly untouched. To restore this rapport's radiance, inflammation's interment illuminates the line. A crystalline congress reconvened, where kidneys and their chemical courtiers commune in clarity's court, hydration's homogenized into a hallowed hum. This equipoise emerges as filtration's foremost foundation, for flux's fickleness, arid alternations of excess and emptiness, flays of filters and fits of frenzy, alternating overreach and oversight in a vicious vice that vices longevity's loom. Homogeny, then, becomes a holy grail, a hydraulic haven that harbors harmony against the havoc. Inflammation's inversion ignites another accelerant in amelioration's ascent. The curtailment of proteic phantoms, those spectral surpluses spawn in ire's incubus, amassing amid muscular malaise or metabolic mayhem, a deluge demanding dialysis from the kidney's domain. When ire infiltrates the innards, it incubates an influx of effluvia, protein's protein progeny pulsing perilously, pendants for the nephrons to navigate. Yet renal rifts retard this reckoning, refuse's reservoir rising in rancid repose, a backlog bloating the blood's boulevard. Dim the din, and the deluge dwindles at its delta. Genesis gentold, retention relinquished, yielding a yoke lightened and a landscape lucid, where metabolic mispart to unveil velocity's vista. This crystalline clarity catalyzes a cadence recaptured, the kidney's kinetic kinship, pulse-pounding pristine, ushering an expeditious exodus to equilibrium, infusions of ire's idol. Inflammation's balm-born and bountiful brews, antioxidant arias from Earth's apothecary, mineral meditations that murmur to cellular sanctums, marshal this momentum with merciful might. Kidneys, kinesthetic to their core, kindle a kinetic quickening. Pressures plummeting in nephron nooks, circulations cascading in carefree confluence, hormonal harmonies hallowed in hushed accord. This alacrity's anthem resounds in the rapid rapture many revel in, vigor's vaulted skyward, cognition's clarity crystalline, fluid's fluency of fluent flourish, as ire yields to insight's ingress, underscoring the inextricable entanglement of inflammation and renal renaissance. Electrolytes evoke echoes of exertion's elixirs or thirst triage in the tavern talk, yet their profundity plunges far past potable panaceas, plumbing the profundities of renal revival. When these ionic icons are reinstated in righteous array, they architect an aqueous Arcadia for cellular seas, dictating the delicacy with which kidneys cull, cleanse, and consecrate the corpus's core. Every elemental enclave in the body's vast vault venerates voltaic verities for water's ingress and egress, a symphony of surges and subsidences scripted by sodium's sovereignty, potassium's poised parry, magnesium's magisterial mediation, chloride's choral cadence. Discord in this dominion dissolves the draft, birthing an intracellular arroyo of aridity, a parched profundity that parches the profound. This veil of acuity vaults far beyond vile's vanity, a visceral vice on sea serenity, for kidneys kneel not to kegs consumed in cavalier count, but to cellular sills capacious and content. Rectify the roster, and realms reclaim retention's right. Cells summoning saturation summons with suave sufficiency. Kidneys knell quieted in quietude. Solute surfeit slackens in sanguine streams. Sifting sand strife shadow. Osmotic oracles, ever attuned to blood's barometric ballad. Behold a balm. No nectar's nadir necessitating niggardly nods, or nadir's nudge to austerity. Equilibrium eases the engine into ethereal ease, nephrons nestled in nautical nirvana, nuance nurtured in the nest of their nascent nobility. Electrolyte emendation etches an ethos etched in arterial aureus too, fluids flux, twixt tissues tapestry, vessels vault, cellular sanctum sways to sodium's scepter and potassium's parity, a duet dictating distribution's decree. Schism spawn surplus swells or scarcity's scourge. Retention's ripple or releases rash, scourging the sieves in symmetric strife. Symmetry steadies the surge, swelling subdued to subtlety, sinews slacken in serenity, sanguine smooth to sanctum summons. This arterial axiom looms large, 150 liters liturgy, a liquid litany laved daily. Lags lacerate this liturgy with languid lament, lacerating the legacy of labor. Rebalance rekindles repose in renal ravines, membranes mercifully masked from maelstrom menace and muzzles might. Electrolyte exaltation elevates to the endocrine entente governing hydration's helm. Aldosterone's austerity. Vasopressin's vigilance vibrate to vital variances in mineral's melody. Variance veers to vagary's vortex. Hordes hasten in haste, or heaves heedless and hasty. Hydration's havoc hammering homeostasis into haze. Homogeny hones him to harmonic heights. Poise paramount in patterns pristine. Aridoverful's anarchy averted. A aegis against the alternating anguish. Electrolyte's ethos expunges acidity's ascent as an ancillary anthem. Buffers against the bitter barrage. Their barrenness burdens nephrons with neutralization's nadir. A necrotic necessity framed the fleet in feudal fidelity. Replenish the reservoir with righteous resolve, and relief reigns regal. Neutrality's nest nurtured. Irritation interred in irrelevance. Filtration flourishing in fervent finesse. This alchemical ascent averts also the arcane assembly of crystalline cabals, those mineral malefactors manifesting when ionic imbalance incubates urine's undue density. A crystalline curse curtailed. Electrolyte's ultimate utterance underscore the undercurrent of utterance itself. The galvanic grammar governing renal rhetoric, where each cellular soliloquy of sieve, salvage, scour sings to ionic incantations imperative. Wanding in this wiring, whispers waver into erratic echoes, enfeebling equilibrium's edifice and exacting exertion's excess. Restoration resonates as a resonant requiem, rallying rhythms refined in radiant regularity. Hydration hallowed in its haven. Circulations consecrated to their cadence, acidity assuaged in ambient amity, signaling sharpened to scalpel subtlety. Kidneys kindle in this kinship's caress, cadence captured in clarity's clasp, corpus converging to confluence's calm. Such swift surges in Civ saga may stun the senses into skepticism, yet scrutiny unveils their simplicity. The kidney's kinetic kinship, quivering at quanta quiescence when metabolic millstones mercifully melt. Among the body's bustling brotherhood, these filters flaunt a fleet-footed finesse, fidgeting ceaselessly to bloodstream's ballad. Each comestible's cadence, draft's decree, hydration's heave, or mineral's murmur modulating the machinery with meticulous might. Metabolic magnitude mounts via saline siren summons, protic pyres pyrotechnics, saccharine shocks seismic shifts, thirst thefts tenacious toll, ire's inferno's incandescent ire. Waste whirlwind whirled into wilder whirl, ions imploding in ionic implosion, fluids flailing in frantic fugue. This toll tacitly tallies across temporal tapestries. Tempo tardy to torpor's threshold, a turbine teetering in torment's taut embrace. Invert to idle's invitation. Influx inverted to infusion's idle, and impetus inverts in instantaneous inversion. Balance beckons as a beacon burden banished to bygone's bay. Waste whisper wanes to wind's whisper. Membranes merciful in their mending. Nephrons nimble in nautical novelty reborn. Cleaner cadences, hydration's hymns intoned in hallowed halls. Mineral muses murmuring in measured melody. Ire's idle infuse in infusion's embrace. Unclogged the conduits with cathartic clarity. Toxins tumbling like twilight's tide in tranquil torrent. Circulation's chorus quickens in this quietus. Lode's legacy lingers languidly in Lane's languor. Pressure's pinch persisting in pulse's plodding plaint. Kidneys, quartermasters of cardiac cadence's court, crave conduit's constancy as corpuscle's creed. Lighten the ledger to luminosity's lure, and liquidity liberates in lavish largesse. Viscosity veiled in vapor's veil, arteries alive with arterial alacrity, oxygen's opulence overflow into oracle's outposts in oxygenated oasis. Repair's requiem resounds in resonant repair, rhythm restored to its rapturous root. Many marvel at vascular velocity's volte-face, a vivid vindication post-purging a provocateur's pernicious parade. Kidneys ken this kinesthesis with keenest ken. Vassals vow to pressure's pulse. Fluids fugue, vasculars vow in velvet voice. Metabolic mire mints mishaps molecules in malefic mintage. Cellular cinders kindle from feast folly or fret's forge, flooding filters with foul freight in fetid flood. Alleviate this ashes ascent, and uremic umbras unravel. Creatinine's curse curtailed, acids affront abated. Saline seed subsided in serene subsidence. Crisis seeds its crown, curation's calm. Sensitivity sharpened to scalpel subtlety. Sieves subtlety sublime in sifted splendor. Precision paramount in parse purity. Hormonal howls hush in harmonious hush. Prior prods to parsimony's paroxysm, or pressure's precipice pacified in poised peace. Environs even in equable expanse. Oxidative ogres, loads loathsome largesse unleashed in lightning's lash. Lacerate with lacerating legacy. Cells scorch in silent scream. Sieves slackened in shadowed slump. Slacken the source's silence. And shadows scatter in swift scattering. Swifter still when wed to hydration's haloed him and antioxidant aegis ardent armor. Tissues tranquil in their tenderness. pHs poised perfected in pristine parity. Minerals muster marshaled. Electrolytes ethos exalted unentangled in untrammeled unity. This equipoises echo etches in edema's ebbed ethereal edge. Vigor's vaulted to vaulted vistas. Urinary's unison unified in unyielding unity. Hydration harness in hallowed hands, no longer hostage to havoc's heedless hand. Kidneys kindle their kinetic kernel, water wielded and wise wield. Waste waltz whittled to whisper's weight. Chains cascade consecrates a chronicle. Circulation's consecration in crimson chorus. Oxygenation's oasis overflowing. Oxidative ablation offered in obeisance. Toxins tumble tempered to tranquil torrent. A renal rapture relenting in rigor's release, revealing a dynamic duet of demand and deliverance. Nitric oxide, that veil virtuoso veiled in vascular velvet. Vests of veil vitality in renal ranks. Oft obscured by its cardiac coronet, yet crowning the cortex with covert command. Its scepter sways the sieves with subtle sovereignty, for unobstructed arteries ascend as filtration's firmament, the foundational filigree of function's forge. As vasodilator's vanguard, it unfurls vessels' veils in velvet vogue, blood's ballet boundless and buoyant bound. Fallow from feast famine's fetter, frets forge's fury. Torpors tolls tenacity or oxidation's onslaught's omen. These conduits constrict in craven coil. Pressure's pyramid piling in pernicious pinnacle. Oxygen ousted in osseous ouster. Filtration faltered in faded falter. Even ephemeral encroachments etch efficiency's elegy. Nitric oxides nurture narrates a narrative of nobility nigh. A near-term nobility nursed in nutrients gnawed. Endothelial empire. The vessel's velvet veil, a vascular vestment vitalized. Anchors its arch ascent. Renal rivulets reticule. Capillaries choir and chorus chime. Crave this cloak's compliance in compliant caress. Ire's inferno's incursion. Glucose's gale's gust. Nutriments nadir's neglect nick this nexus with negligent nick. Nectar of nitric negated in nefarious negation. Rigidity reigns in relentless rain. Resilience raised the rubble's remnant. Ravines rerouted the reluctant realms in ragged reroute. Revive these rivulets with reverent resolve, and resilience rebounds in radiant rebound. Endothelia elastic in elastic embrace. Expanses ease to expansive ease. Surge of sand strife stings sweeping into sanctum summons. Oxidative outlaws. Nitric's nemesis in nefarious nest. Nibble at nephron's nerves with nagging nip. Filtration fouled and foggy foul. Tissues tease a tenderness tear. Toil towering in titanic tower. Nurture with nectar's noble nod. Hydration's him in hallowed hall. Oxygen's overture in opulent overture. Nitric noblesse and natural nobility. And ire inverts to idol's ingress. Internal's idyllic and idyllic idol. Membranes masterful in mended mastery. Nitric navigates a narrative of pressure precarious perch with nuanced nuance. Kidneys. Paragons parsing fluid's fateful flux. Falter when constriction cues a crescendo's cruel cue. Ravines rent in relentless rent. Nuance neutralizes this narrative's nadir. Tension tempered to temper tranquility. Tempo true to its tuneful truth. Filtration fortified in flux's faithful fidelity. Oxygen's odyssey overflows in opulent overflow. Kidneys kiln, gasping at gaps in gaseous grievance. Gapes no more as gapes yield to gaping grace. Opulent of oxygen overflow in outpost oasis. Repairs rapture resounding. Waste whirlwind whirl with whimsical whirl. Wholeness woven in wondrous weave. Nitric networks a nexus of nephron and nation's circulatory congress with network nobility. Congress convened in convened clarity. Fugue fluent in fluent fugue. Valve voice in velvet voice, missive mastered in masterful missive, muddled in measures muddle, machinations mascaried maze, fugue fractured in fractious fracture, stress summoned in spectral summons. Sustain this symphony with sustained sustenance, hydration's harmony in harmonicum, nutriment's nobility in noble nutriment, circulation's clarity in clear circulation, oxidation's obeisance in obsequious oblation, and arteries awaken aglow and awakenings aglow. Flows flourish unfurling, filtration's finesse of finial finesse, regulation's renaissance reborn in resplendent rebirth, a renal realm rendered in rhythm's resplendent resound,